There
And
we
we're
go.
live. Hey, welcome to the Adventures of Travelin Matt, the YouTube channel. Our little attempt at vlogging here and introducing you to the people I know and that I've worked with over the years. This is Brooklyn Shanti, aka the one Shanti, the man Shanti himself, all the way live from Virginia today, right?
Yeah, I'm here with my family for the holidays. How you doing?
Oh yeah, Merry Christmas, hence the hat. Happy New Year's. Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, all that good stuff. It's
Festivus
good
for
to
the
have
rest of
you.
us.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you too,
Yeah,
man.
yeah. We're about to get into the feats of strength, I guess. Um, and we've been together a long time, my brother. It's this what's part of this show is just introducing to some of the people that I've worked with over the years. Part of the Adventures of Travelin Matt. You have definitely been a big part of what I've been doing over the last few years as well as the past few decades. Um, I mean, we've known so many mutual friends and people in the music business. It's amazing we never met in person in the states, especially with me going to Temple University and you right around the corner at Penn State. Um, so let's get into and how it all began in
Well,
Bangkok,
that was
Thailand.
yeah, because I mean, you had done time at Rough House Records with Jim Drew, right? So
Yes,
y'all worked y'all worked
it's
together back
amazing.
and
Yeah,
forth.
you guys became partners with a guy who I worked with at Rough House. Big shout outs to Jim, who is now at Soul Spasm Records and still helping us out in many ways. We'll get to talking about that. But yeah, right now, what is your fondest memory of joining the Adventures of Traveling Matt?
It was that first day that I ever landed in Bangkok, and like Billy picked me up from the airport in Cuba, if you remember. And so that first day, it was surreal because I was coming in from London, and then I got a quick bite to eat, and then Billy took me over to MTV to meet Cavo and Niraj, who flew in at different times, and then like my first day in Bangkok, we were live on MTV's Just Talk, and then I recall we were going to check into the hotel afterwards, and right after that, I went to sound check at Q Bar, and I met you, and
That's right.
and that was my very first time in Bangkok. And then from then, it was like you and I were the resident hip hop heads. So it was like, because all the other guys, they weren't into like our era of hip hop. They weren't in, I mean, you know, all sorts of folks had been going through Thailand at that moment. Like there was Will I Am, pre Black Eyed Peas coming back. There was, all sorts of, Cut Master Kurt was coming through. All these other legends and heroes were going in and out. But at that time, I mean, I know that you knew Will for a minute, but like the thing that we call hip hop right now had yet to manifest because we're talking 2002, 2003. And so in 2003, by the time we had been kind of like regionally touring as the Dum Dum Project and breaking lots of Southeast Asia and South Asia into the sound of what hip hop is. Not even was, because I think the sound that hip hop is right now was what we were doing. And that was 20 years ago. So it feels really good
That's
now to
great.
like, yeah, right now to hear like, because what's going on in trap, we used to call the down south bounce, right? The 808s, like that was coming out of NOLA, that was coming out of like Miami. It was like Miami bass mixed with the New Orleans hip hop scene, mixed with what was happening in Atlanta. But Atlanta at that time was just it was still so deaf, So trap hadn't really manifested yet. So what we were doing, there was no label for it. So we were like Future Asian Beat or Global Beats or something. Thievery Corporation created Down Tempo as their description of what it was, and but nobody had the words to correlate what that sound was with what was happening. And it was pre-internet everything. It was pre-social media. It was just people. The word didn't get
Good
out
old
until,
days.
yeah, the word didn't get out until like you toured the world, and then you did the interviews, and then the phrases started getting passed around, or you did the terrestrial radio shows in every country, because it's not like today where I log on to BBC One Extra and I listen to like some of the countdown charting shows and mixed shows. Then I'll listen to the stuff coming out of India. Then I'll listen to stuff coming out of Japan, and I could do it like at my fingertips. But back then you actually had to go to that country and go listen to the radio, and that's where I felt privileged, and I met you along that pathway to privilege as like what became sort of like the pattern of my life now, which is just keep on pushing and keep on moving. Feels a lot better now because I have everyone, like, I could just pick up a phone and contact anyone like this. But it used to be, I mean, folks don't know about long distance charges. Folks don't know about, pre voice over IP. Folks don't know about pre email. I mean, we were doing email, but it was like not at the extent that it's going on right now. So to bring it all back, the beginning of the adventure was, I don't, did we? Yeah, Dum Dum and I had done a track called Johnny John, and we were the first cats up in Bollywood from New York shooting a major hip hop video out in Bollywood. So we'd already done that, and that helped us establish, um, the forward progression, what was to become the album that was called Spiritual Bling. Now, the great thing about the adventure that began with y'all, when I say y'all, I mean like the old school Sikkim Soy Sip at Q Bar crew, because we were all just friends and family. I mean, we got our first major label deal in Thailand. Sony Music Vectera. We eventually worked with Universal and some other folks too, but the first album deal we got, it phased in Thailand, and that was a blessed thing because we had talked to Russell Simmons, we had talked to Tom Silverman, we had talked to like every, Russell Simmons was Def Jam at that point, Tom Silverman was Tommy Boy. I had talked to Virgin and Richard Branson's people, and like it was hard to find a place to land. And then finally, Sean or Cavo, the head of Dum Project, found an opportunity in London, and so we signed to X Square Records, and then that helped us build the progression. But by the time we got to Thailand, we were ready. We were ready to pop. So, and that was good because we were like adult, deep little squad. And
Yeah, I was in that video, and now it's on every karaoke machine in Southeast Asia, I
oh
believe.
my gosh,
Still,
that's
still to
probably
this
why
day.
you like I just did the 20-year anniversary performance for the mayor of San Francisco at Diwali back in November. Only a month ago from today, right? That was like what, November 15th. But like
Wow.
they walked me out, and like I did the Punjabi 50 thing. I was excited because I haven't gotten to perform that in a while. But it's sort of like the Renaissance at the moment, you know?
Well, it's been a long journey, and sometime over COVID, you and me started. You got me to dust off the microphone,
Oh, it was
and
pre-COVID. It was pre-COVID.
yeah,
It was
that's
pre-COVID.
true. That's right. You
No,
you
no, no.
moved out
No,
here.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah,
You,
you
you
actually, yeah, we
underestimate.
did record that before COVID, with
Because
Metaphor, and you
look,
came
look,
out here to help run Def Jam for a little while.
and and
And
and, and so I came out in 2017. So
wow,
I was coming out for my birthday, and I remember it was your birthday the week after my birthday, and I was only supposed to stick around for like so long, and you convinced me to basically
that
move to Thailand.
that turned into a journey.
Yeah, because it was February 3rd, 2020, that I flew back to the States, and
That's
then
right.
all the lockdown stuff started happening. And we did work through lockdown. But what wound up happening was, um, in 2017 we started recording under the name Pad Thai Soundsystem. And earlier in 2017, I had gone to Texas, and I linked up with a crew of radio folks named Generation. And so this concept of Pad Thai Sound System kind of popped into my head. And so big up my man FX Box. So me and FX Box did one tiny little gig in Houston as Pad Thai Soundsystem. So that was like
Oh,
the origin. We did one tiny little gig to figure out, hey, do we like this? Does it fit? But then in 2017, a lot of things happened where the woke movement began, the Me Too movement began. There were a lot of things. I wound up living in California before I moved to Thailand, but it hit me in my mind by the time I got to Thailand that in order to call a crew or a project Pad Thai Sound System, because it was a former king of Thailand that commissioned the creation of Pad Thai as a communication methodology to spread good tidings across the world in the name of Thai people. You know, when I got that understanding, I was like, I feel like even though Southeast Asia was called Indochine by the French because Indians and Chinese people were brought in to populate the area. So like there's a lot of Indian background, a lot of Chinese background, a lot of like mixed in with the Thai, the Cambodian, Laotian, and a lot of the Malaysian and Vietnamese as well. Like our blood runs through all of these different societies and cultures. But like being boots on the ground over in Thailand again, I realized like, shit, man, I don't want to appropriate anything. Like I don't want to, because my background's Brooklyn, but I've traveled around a bunch. I've lived between India and DC and Brooklyn and Philly and all these great places, but I'm not of the blood, right? And that's when I was like, you know what? I want to continue with Pad Thai Sound System. I want to include FX Box, who is Mexican in descent, but I got to give it to you. Like that's something that you could come into and really help guide. And then I got my full, like I didn't know that stuff about the history of Pad Thai until you put me onto the math. So I did the math and the numbers weren't they weren't mathing for me. And I was like, all right, let's record this Pad Thai sound system. And that's when you broke down. You took me to the night markets, you took me to show me the spirit houses. Like one of our future singles is called Fanta Ghetto Blaster, but you showed me how like the people would leave Fanta at the spirit houses in recognition of the gods.
the blood
I had
sacrifice.
Yeah, I had no idea, but like really taking that 3 years to embed in Thailand and go all around Thailand and Cambodia with you, I mean, that gave me a lifetime's education. Because the first time when we first met, I don't know how to say it, but like when you're working with, like if you work with Cavo, who's now over at Lifted in Asia, and like I worked with him over at B2 when they spun that up. Cavo's like a powerhouse, so it's like,
Big shout outs to him. He's
yeah,
done a
big
lot.
big up
He's done a lot for Asia and still continues to do so.
Dum Dum Project family till the end, man. But like there wasn't enough time to learn the game because we were on the move. And the name of the game was fame back in the day. The name of the game was let's keep making these records, flipping these records, because we weren't just in Thailand. We were in Shanghai, we were in Beijing, we're all over India, we're in Japan. Then once we finish up our itinerary in Asia, we're back in Europe, go all the way through Europe, like Amsterdam, Rotterdam. Like we were one of the first groups, first hip hop crews.
Yeah.
I know one of the first Indian origin hip hop artists in parts of Germany. To like, it was, and like Germany loves like old school golden era hip hop. So like you got your Das Effects, like they have their locals like Sammy Deluxe and everybody else, like the old school G's, and they got this vibrant. I mean, I'm already talking 20 years ago, right? But we were going in there doing this Indian fusion hip hop thing, and that was so different. And like not even Indian fusion, because if you listen to Superfly Bindi, there's a lot of Thai influence. There's like some minor Chinese influence, and then like via Shillong, and then there's like the Indian influence that was obvious. But
This is way before Jay-Z and Punjabi MC as well.
um, yeah, for Cavo, yes. For
For
Dum Dum
yeah, for you
Project, yeah,
guys, yeah,
yeah, yeah.
it came out
But
about the same time, but
yeah, it
the
was
influence
just
was there.
yeah, it was just like ironic that or it was timely, I guess, but everyone was thinking the same thought. And when that Jay-Z and Punjabi MC collab dropped, we were the crew that had like an album of that kind of feeling, that kind of sound. But being like the nerdy music train spotter that I am, I would say that the sounds are same but different. But to a Western ear, they're probably the same exact sounds blending together. For my ear, it's a little this, a little that, but very different. They represent very different things. And then like for Jay Z to call it in Iraq, like you better leave Iraq alone. It was just cultural insensitivity for me. I was like, ah, like Punjab is not in Iraq. Like we are different citizens of the same world. But back then it was a different time, and no shade, but it's just like you know, as a kid that grew up inside of hip hop, I wish like people would have advised him like that might not be the bar. But
Well, he comes off the top of the head with most of his rhymes if he's not stealing them from somebody else.
okay,
So,
let's not
you know,
let's dial that
we
back.
we
But
won't
here's
go there.
but yeah, but here's the thing. Like it's
But it was amazing. Cabo actually moved out here and ended up working with me at a Q bar, and that's what sort
yeah.
of fueled the fire out here as well. Before you came out here,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
and
Actually, so I came out there. Was he at Cuba? Because I know he played. So there was a phase. It, I think he had played while we were living in London, and I think I was still living in London. But I got to get the
yeah,
timeline.
that's when he moved back here for a while.
Okay, so yeah, because I was all wrapped up in my own like, I was trying to get my first album done. Then I was running around with Pavin, who had started the Foreign Beggars. So I was living with Pavin for a while, and I got sucked into like the UK underground scene that he had going on around him with like Tommy Evans and you know eventually like they linked with Task Force and Jest and like all of like the legends back in London. Those that underground hip hop scene, and it was watching those guys operate was truly amazing because it was like they weren't like in New York, everything was very genre bound. Like me and Metaphor and everyone would be hip hop MCs that would go to the rave and then do like run on rapping, meaning like we were more like traditional rappers. We weren't jungleists. We weren't like jump up MCs. Um, we weren't hype men at the time. Like, but and that was before Metaphor started DJing and becoming like the mixtape king of Philly. So like, but then I kind of took a look at. I'd been to a number of raves with Med through the '90s, but then when when you stepped into the Foreign Beggars world or Coven's world, he was known as Drop back then, and he was with DJ Hype and NDC and all the drum and bass legends like every weekend. So we would like get on the trains, take taxis, do whatever, and go to like 3 gigs a night. One would be a hip hop gig, one would be like a drum and bass gig, and one would be an after hours gig. And it's like we were so young, I think like 22, 23, something like that. Like you could just stay up all night for a few nights. And like in London over the summer, they only get like 2 hours of darkness, or it maybe never gets dark. And then the sun goes kind of down and it's like dusk and then it comes right back out. So you could spend 2 or 3 nights running all around London and just not noticing. Like,
Well, the
and let me
crazy
tell you,
days.
yeah, let me tell you,
Well,
back in those days when they put a little record label check in your pocket, and you got a few $1,000 and you're like, oh, I
I'm
mean,
rich.
that's what it was back then. You didn't really know what it felt like to have or to lose money. You just had this impetus to go and keep making art, keep making music, keep driving yourself to go do something.
It
You know.
was the ride. But I mean, we had a great ride while you were here. We recorded almost a complete album that's still on its way through Soul Spasm and Jim, and
Yeah. So
we
so
just made
something.
some new stuff. I'll put a link down below. We got a new track out, fresh from Thailand, and all out. Uh, our first few singles have actually kind of charted. We were featured on
Yeah,
Apple Music and things like that.
we were the
Um,
editor's pick Christmas last year or the year before for the Spirit House on Apple Music, and so congrats to that. But big up to Jay Zone on the drums on that one. Um, I remember he was finishing up Madlib's Ancient Ancestors drum parts while he sent those drum parts over. So that was it you know, it felt good to know like, hey, I could send an email and get some stuff, you know?
yeah, well, if you haven't checked it out, look us up. We're on Spotify under Pad Thai Soundsystem, as well as Brooklyn Shanti, or not.
Just
Yeah,
Pad Thai Sound System. Or you can go to
yeah.
padthaisoundsystem.com and it'll lead you to the music.
Okay, that's easiest way to get a hold of us and listen to what we've been doing out here for a little while. We got a lot more coming up. Uh, we'll get in some studio time soon. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
I gotta
We have
sharpen my
a
swords.
we have a single dropping January 24th, 2025. It's called Fresh from Thailand. And once again it features our homie Metaphor. And we
We
had
can
a
preview that on YouTube.
we had a pretty big successful run with Metaphor on a single called All Out Together. And so like we decided to re-up that energy. And yeah, and then we're gonna come out with the Spirit House EP sometime in the spring. And it's just gonna be um, let's see, going down the list. We were featured in a feature length documentary film called Natsama, and our song Dukko made it into that soundtrack. Um, and then we have
What's that? Is that on Netflix or Amazon
not yet.
TV?
They haven't decided on a streamer yet, but that's on the way. It made all of the rounds of all the festivals, and I think the next thing that happens is it gets picked up. So okay, and then the other aspect is uh, we got picked up by Africa Islam and Ice T. Hold on.
Some professional wrestling going on in your studio?
So the today, so my
Yeah, we
brother
did a track, "Crazy for My Flow."
Crazy for my flow. So we had the opportunity to work with Africa Islam and Ice T. Big up Izzy, how are you? And we submitted a song that made it onto into Ice T's catalog for like all the music that he flips for television and film. And so like we've gotten a bunch of placements through the OG, like the OG, and you
Yeah,
know,
that's going to be featured on Ice Coco Love Chanel, the TV show. I'm not sure when that or if that is launched in the US or not or yet. But yeah, we're going to be featured on the soundtrack for that. Uh, yeah, big things coming 2025. It's
2025.
yeah, I can't believe we made it this long. And we're still working together very merrily into the new year.
I don't think that's gonna end. I've got like so because I got vaults and like all music producers, I got vaults. I got Dum Dum Project songs that no one's ever heard. I've got songs from back in the '90s no one's ever heard. And the crazy thing is now working with the younger folks who want that '90s sound, I just go back onto this old computer I got, and I've got like 10,000 beats from literally 1994 to 1999. Whereas it's like I'll just go through, and it's like I'll listen to the way that things were produced back then and how raw it was, and I'll just grab the files, flip them, and then out the door they go. And it's like, you know, it's a lesson in don't throw anything away. Because when it comes to art, it's like when Basquiat was getting started and he didn't have money and he would trade a canvas for goods or services, like to keep his lights on or whatever. And those canvases, I mean, at the time, an artist never knows if you've got self confidence saying, you know, at some point this is going to be worth something. Otherwise, you know, you're a quirky artist that is near other people, and it's like, here's some of what I do. Please, you know, enjoy it. But it's like, man, it's like the Basquiat in me. Like I'm looking back at the kid 20 some odd years ago that was producing like ferociously, and I'm like, oh man, like that was gold because people didn't really appreciate it in its time. Back in the 90s, you could only put out like one 12-inch record every 6 months, 8 months, right? And you would hop around, and that's what it was. It was 12-inch records because that's what DJs would cut onto mixtapes, which would be on CD or literal cassette tapes. So it's like what we have now, where there's 100,000 new songs going into Spotify per day. Back then, it was like if you're an artist, you got one song and a B side every 6 to 8 months. So it's completely. So of course, a lot of people like us, we have archives. If you kept the stuff around, like the other thing is you got to keep the machines around too, which is what I've done. But you know, so the Pad Thai stuff, we got like 2 albums worth of material that I'm refining, and it feels good. In 2025, we're gonna start dropping.
Yeah, we're gonna unleash it on the world eventually. Um, yeah, it's been an interesting journey. So where are you off to next?
I go from here, New Year's Eve, I go over to San Diego. Then from San Diego, I go to the Bay Area for a while to work. From the Bay Area, I go over to India. Be in India until almost March. March, I come back to LA. Then from LA, I think it's going to be back to New York for a bit.
Stay on the move. And you just dropped the new EP with Thomas Blondett, I understand.
We did a mixtape. Yeah. So, like, the concept behind that was we were sitting around when I got back to DC a few weeks ago, and and he was like, "Look, I found all these remixes that are on the label that never really got promoted that hard." And he was like, "I want to promote them again." And I was like, "Why don't you give them to me? I'll flip them into new songs, and I'll remix the remixes, and then I'll stitch it all together for us." And so that became a mixtape we just dropped on Christmas Day, which is 2 days ago, called Massive and Crew. And so it features Vishal Kanwar from Genius Mistakes, another crew on someplace called Brooklyn, and also Crow the Timeless from Basmati Brothers, which is another group on the label. And so this is going to be a big run. 2025 is going to be a big run for my little thing I call Brooklyn Shanti Presents, where like I kind of like you know take a step back, and it's like, yeah, I'll lean into like a few things here and there, but really I'm trying to push outwardly. Got to get Pad Thai Soundsystem, Basmati Brothers, get Genius Mistakes, all these other like corollary things that have been on the label for many years. Like it's time to like start getting the momentum behind all that. So someplace called Brooklyn is sort of like our factory, but then Brooklyn Shanti Presents is really me like shifting more into the role of like, okay, what do we need? Do we need like a TV show behind Koshik? Do we need a YouTube series behind you? Like it's putting my producer and presenter hat on more so than just like grabbing a mic and hitting the tarmac.
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing a lot of it. I've already checked out the project with Thomas. Good stuff, great beats, awesome rhymes by you. I can't wait to see if you can get it back out here so we can work on more, or eventually get my ass back to the States to work on some things.
I think
But
it'd be
yeah,
easier to get me over there.
it's interesting. Like every time I try to think about going back home, somebody comes over here and throws a wrench in it all. But I it's and this new thing of working on the internet is definitely amazing. I mean, I can interview you from here and anywhere in the world you're at. So yeah, it's just a little something for me to present to my peoples and give a little background on what we've done, what we're gonna do, and how it's been for the past 20 years.
I think it's nice, like me being like, it's funny how like I was the tech guy from the 90s onward, because a lot of people don't know my background is I started programming at 7 and rapping at 8, and by 12 I figured out how to do stuff on computers, and that was like 1991 or something. But like I was early to tech, I was early to like software development and all that. Um, but now I'm the one that's like, I'd rather just be in the room and use like analog gear and just like get a vibe rather than like what the whole world is doing, which is what I was trying to do like 20 years ago. So
Yeah,
like
it's
all the
weird. Like we had the QR podcast, we had the QR TV, we had all these things going 20 some years ago, and now everybody's doing it. And I'm just like, yeah, but I did that before. But now it's time for me to get back on it, and and quit dreaming of getting back on the radio because it's a dead art. So this is the new
I think
thing.
I think I think it morphs because I think podcasting. So we were young enough to not like when I was really really young. People used to listen to the AM band on radio, right? Because there was AM and FM, and so FM is what eventually became like the band that had all of the contemporary modern music, right? And then your shock jock radio and stuff. But AM was your talk radio, like your PBS, your NPR, your everything else. And I just see, as we're transitioning into this digital era, I just see podcasting as having replaced AM radio because no one's going to go back to AM radio, right? And then Spotify and everything else, playlists, it's like a DJ less art, but it's sort of what Clear Channel has made terrestrial radio into, or iHeart. So I see the streamers as being FM and the podcasters as being AM. There's a corollary here. So like it's not reinventing the wheel, it's just using technology to relabel something that people had the impetus to pay attention to previously. And so YouTube is the new MTV, YouTube is the new cable, YouTube is the new everything. And it's like I've noticed that everyone from Discovery Channel to History Channel to PBS, they're putting all of their shows onto YouTube. So YouTube has become like the free TV that you used to have as a kid. And then, Paramount Network, Netflix, Amazon Studios, that's now your cable. So these concepts are the same concepts from yesteryear, but it's just new ways. And honestly, they're making a lot more money off of all of us. Think. I
Yeah.
look at my friends who have Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, Paramount, and other things. Cable used to be like 65 to 80 bucks a month. They're paying up to 200 bucks a month for all these platforms because then they also got the Spotify or the Apple Music. They also got whatever their kids want. So 200 to 300 bucks a month go out the door just on the platforms alone. And then some of these platforms like Paramount and Hulu, they're still serving you ads. So while everyone complains that digital and streaming loses us money, they're actually making a killing. They doubled down because they're also not paying what they were once paying to content creators, to showrunners, to music producers. So the one thing that people have to kind of look at and be wary of is, you know, for instance, I've just recently, like this week, we're relaunching everything, pulling it back from someplace called Brooklyn and putting it under Brooklyn Shanti Presents. And I'm just going to start putting things into Substack because we're going to gate some of the remixes that I've been doing that get approved and this and that. Because putting things behind a paywall, Patreon is a paywall. Substack is becoming a paywall. Medium has a paywall. So for content creators, or for artists, people who make art, uh, you got to think of a better way. We started experimenting back in October with we'll do the releases on Apple Music and Spotify and everything, but what if we did a SoundCloud and YouTube to Bandcamp pathway? And from the beginning of October to here the end of December, we've made more through that and like providing niche underground music to the followers, listeners, and fans who want that kind of thing on SoundCloud and YouTube. And they've been going to Bandcamp and supporting. And we ran the experiments on the free level, you can donate if you want, versus the paid level. And we've had people buying out the catalog. And so it's interesting to kind of take a look at the data and then monitor the user behavior, right? And then the other thing that we've really been taking a look at is the rate of consistency, like how often. And that's why we've gotten back into like the label schematics. We've gotten back into, there's a small documentary arm of someplace called Brooklyn that we've not been really developing a lot of material around. But now we're realizing like, if we just lump it into Brooklyn Shanti Presents, we've already got a little bit of traction going on there. and we're seeing numbers. Like we're seeing like there's not a whole lot of followers, and that's the interesting thing. You'll find like a lot of people on YouTube or other platforms let you know like, hey, I might have a million streams of this thing, but I only have like 1,000 followers. So it's interesting looking at that because there is like a straight CRM component. There is a connection between this content went out, then we linked it to this merch, then we linked it to this download link, and people did respond and react because of the strength of the contact. They just didn't subscribe, you know? And so
It's kind of
that's,
like I'm still on. I'm actually still on AM radio. Big shout outs to Jeff Jaggers, Zulu Nation Radio,
is that the one in
KTNG
Colorado?
850. Yep, out of Colorado,
Nice.
KTNG 850. It's on iHeartRadio. It's on a lot of streaming platforms. Every Saturday, I'm online mixing for them. And you can check out the Mixcloud, Travelin Matt, and listen to all my archives. Nice Christmas mix up if you're still in the mood for the holidays. New Year's Eve mix coming up this weekend. Yeah, so we're it's not a completely dead art. I know he's still making money through contributions and donations to his AM radio channel, and Zulu Nation is supporting it.
But you
Um,
but it's been syndicated, right? So you said it's in the iHeart app. So
yeah,
then
yeah,
there's, yeah, so like not everybody can jump into the iHeart app, right? So he's got a long-standing relationship, and I would guess that he gets a lot of streams out of the iHeart partnership,
yeah. So like
right?
I'm broadcast. He tells me that we're in over like 100 countries now that are listening in on the broadcast. So it's amazing to me how it's still out there, even though it's a small little radio station out of Colorado Springs.
Well, so here's the interesting thing, and I think like again, we're talking about the middle of America when we're talking about Colorado, and there's a lot of legacy listeners out there. The other thing about America is we have the baby boomers, and so the baby boomers, they have the highest dispensable income at the moment. It used to be the kids, the Gen X kids, and then the the Gen Y, and then what was it, the millennials and everything. But no, the boomers have the highest capacity you know, to spend what they've got. And so that's not a bad play because the kind of stuff that y'all are spinning will appeal to baby boomers. If they know who and what Zulu Nation is, then they're definitely not Gen Alpha, you know.
Yeah,
So, and that's a good look. That's a good look. What I'm finding out is for some of the projects, like it was really when Run the Jewels blew up that I realized a midlife, mid career, play. It was Run the Jewels, and then Griselda came up commercially, like globally commercially. I'm not talking about, I'm from New York, so I know Griselda. I know, though, it's different when you're from that place, right? We've been rocking with Alchemist since the 90s, but right now is his renaissance, right? So there's a whole category. Pre-pandemic, I was calling it dad rap because that's who was listening to it. New fathers who wanted to find material that echoed what was going on when they first fell in love with music, right, in the 90s. And when Run the Jewels really blew up, and like the conduit was Cartoon Network and a couple of other plugs, but when they really blew up, that was like the transition between dad rap into like this shit's actually going to become cool. And when it
yeah. I mean,
became
Snoop Dogg is hosting the Olympics. That was a mind blower.
so this is the evolution of the thought, right? Because this is the first time in hip hop culture, like when Jay-Z kept on when he put out 444, that was a landmark watershed moment because he was one of the oldest rappers to put out new work in that manner. But then when the Jewels, who were not too far behind him age-wise, you know, it started plugging in together. This new Snoop album that came out a couple of weeks ago, I'm floored. I think it's one of the best things that's been written. Like, if you think about the fact that people in their late 50s are making highly competitive work against, you know, I'm
Yeah,
into all the rap.
Ice Cube's new album is really good.
I've only heard the
Uh,
first single, but I loved it. The one with Killer Mike on it, like
yeah,
I loved it. And the
it's
video was
amazing
on
to see.
point. Yeah, everything about it, it just and it's because they're using ghostwriters too. You know what I'm saying? It's like, people go hard on Drake, and like I don't have too much comment about a lot of that, but I can tell like a lot of Dr. Dre stuff, a lot of Snoop stuff has been ghostwritten in the past, and it's like I can tell when a rapper's cadence changes to the ghostwriter's cadence and all that stuff. So, and on the new Cube stuff, I don't know what assistance he got in it. I mean, you look at if you watch the documentary on Dre and Snoop in the studio, like Dre produced, he vocal coached every line out of Snoop, right? But then you also see like when Jelly Roll was in the studio to make him sound more of color, there was like a black girl coaching him through his lines to make it sound right, and to hit more urban notes, if you will. But that's the way that part of the machine operates. We don't operate that way, but that's because we come from like a completely different source. And I've ghostwritten and done vocal coaching for a lot of pop people. So it's like, so when we get in the studio, we already got that. But it's just, as a person who has seen results from coaching other people through songs and moments, when I heard that new Snoop record, I was like, this is done in the way that's competitive for today. Like it used to be, like if we want to go back to Eric and Rakim, we can. Like we can cut the rug on that. We can like go toe to toe, but that's not the way that records have been made at that level for decades, But then, when you're talking about a Snoop, you're talking about a worldwide brand enterprise and a rollout of something where everything from Corona to Cheetos, you know what I'm saying? Like to Martha Stewart knives, to 16 Crimes wine, like everywhere you go, he's no longer like he's transcended culture. I truly think like there's only one other person that's gotten to that level, and it was Bob Marley. But Snoop even did the Snoop Lion record and went into that category for a second and jumped out. Like Snoop, Bob Marley, there's like only a few people that'll be on that level, Tupac will always be Tupac, but he wasn't as enterprising. There's no Tupac coffee. There's no Tupac,
there's a lot of rappers out there trying to copy Tupac, but nobody's
no. I mean, coffee or tea or nightlight or, the merchandising aspect is not there. The respect and the poetic aspect is, the stylistic influence is.
I see what you mean, yeah.
But where we're going as a human civilization, we're going to remember, like, you take a look around, like, Ludacris is the State Farm guy right now. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's around to, like, do the plugs. So a whole generation of humans get exposed to you, and then you're like, oh, that was the guy that did that, that did that, that did that. And, like, what I'm learning is a lot of alpha don't remember will.i.am as a musician. They think of him as a judge on The Voice and a tech guy. So it's like, it only takes 2 or 3 years for these things now to shift over. So it's like, so, and I try to, there's a lot of younger artists I try to nurture into like the art, but I try to tell them like the music is the music is sort of the loss leader, and it's the most passion driven. It's the thing that keeps me here, that keeps me glued to reality. But it's all the other aspects around it, like your branding, your tie-ins. 2 decades ago when you met me, I was the one telling Cabo, I don't want to sell out. I don't want to schlep for a brand. Why do we need a sponsor? And that's the way the world was hardwired. Like if people knew you were making money from a brand, they would think that your art sucks. But then, times changed. Money left the situation. Now we're in a late stage capitalist scenario in America, singularly, and that is bleeding over to the rest of the world. So to get that nod, you go into it with a brand. And I've done a lot of brand tie-ins now, and I will tell you those years that I do get support from brands, even though I'm not like driving a crazy car or living in. I mean, you like my house? I got my piano over there and everything. But
we did a mixtape for Burton Snowboards.
Yeah.
Something I would have never imagined that I would have done.
Shout out Locash, man. He put that all together. That was DJ Locash. Big love. He's one of our homies. Um, that's gonna, and our single with him, Mukbang with the Princess, that'll be on the EP that drops this spring. But yeah, it's like now those kinds of things open up opportunity, and I saw through the Burton correlation that a lot of the rap that we do, skaters, surfers, snowboarders, like they love the vibe, and that's the vibe. Like, and if we didn't do that tie-in, then a whole segment of people that love our music would have never been exposed to it, you know. And so that's just how it works right now, um, and it's interesting. And I
Yeah,
think Burton's a
it's
great brand.
strange. I have met fans in out in the nightlife that know of Pad Thai Soundsystem and are shocked that it's me, and I'm speechless every time I meet one. Like, wait, you know my music, and I know you said be prepared for that,
Yeah,
but it's still a shock when I get, when people know who I am and recognize that that's the music that I've put out. It's a new frontier for me.
I mean, I think there's a succinct difference. I was having this conversation just earlier today, um, and it was over using the term legend, right? Because if you go to California or you go to London, like it's slang now. It's like, oh, you haven't met my homie? This is the legend, Shanti. And it's like, at first I was like, come on, kid. But then it was more like, okay, this is just a word that gets thrown around. The legendary Roots crew. People are
Yeah,
self proclaiming being legendary. So we're living in this era of not just hip hop culture. I think it's social media culture as well. But
yeah. Well,
it's
I saw Mike Tyson was talking about the word legend, and he was like, it's an imaginary word. It
yeah,
doesn't mean anything.
yeah,
Um, you just got to do you. And
yeah.
if people think you're a legend and know who you are because of that, it's a blessing, but it doesn't really mean anything.
It really
Uh,
is semantics, and really, if you think about it, I'm from a very academic family. Like everyone's like professors in academia and stuff. It's really the academics who determine who is and is not a legend, because the legend is subsequent of the lore, and the lore is the folklore. The folklore are the stories that are told of legendary people when they've been gone, when their life and times have been
yeah,
analyzed. But
that's what Tyson was saying. He ain't gone yet. You
exactly,
know, he's still
yeah.
here in the moment. So yeah, it was an interesting conversation to hear him say that because after all he's accomplished, um, and
Yeah,
we're gonna get there. So yeah,
I mean, so what to back the dump truck back up a little bit. What I was telling you when we started on the Pad Thai journey was just to get prepared for the attention, because there's other people that I circulate with who put out their music as a form of ego buffet, if you will. Like, it's like, and we all got these folks in our circles. When you've been in hip hop as long as we've been, it's, and I don't think anything of it until people who are not in hip hop or not in music notice the behavior, and they're like, "Oh, that person's really narcissistic or self-centered." And I know, for in reality, it's like, well, that's just kind of a component of their personality, right? Because that braggadocio, that head game, it's like being a boxer. Like when you're a rapper, you're a boxer. So it's like, and that's why it's like I can go into my rapper mode, and I can go into my Rocky mode, and just go into my like extreme studio mode, and then I know for what I'm trying to do, which might not be what anyone else is trying to do, but for what I'm specifically trying to accomplish, no one can fuck with me because I got ideas in my head. Who's gonna like go to be a Bengali kid from Brooklyn that's living between India and Thailand and go like, hey, do this Pad Thai sound system thing with me, and then let's rap about Fanta Ghetto Blasters and Spirit Houses, and then let's take that back to Philly, let's take that back to Boston, Portland, and let's like blow it up. I mean, who else is thinking that way? So like, no one else is like competing in this lane that I'm in because no one else is thinking on that global conduit level. But there are a lot of people when it shows up at the party, they want to dance to it because they're like, oh, that's how that would sound. But somebody's actually got to be boots on the ground and go do it. So that's why it's like I could be a boxer. I'm my own ego chief because when people come up to me, no, I don't have Drake's numbers, nor do I want them. Like I don't want them the way that they were acquired, and I don't want them, because there's only one person who's ever written for me in my entire career, and that's Jadon Blackamore. He wrote a song with me, and he gave me a verse, and that was in the spirit of us sharing. And then I wrote some things with him. We did some co-writes. But then before that, me and Cabo co-wrote. Like as a producer, he'd be like, I don't like that word. Can you change that word? And that was in the late 90s, early 2000s when rappers would be like, nah, you're the producer, I'm the MC. But I went to him and I was like, he understands the groove and the pattern of the drums. And he thinks that me saying these words better over the drums. But then this is a guy that was already in a ska band, a hip hop band, and this and that. He's thinking of it from like Jamaican patois onto like, British punk rock to this and that. And something's not sitting well with him. Well, I'm going to listen to him. And he says, change this sentence because it doesn't flow right. How many times have I done that to you?
Yeah. No, I mean, we're co-writing everything, and we're going to continue to do that. Be sure to check us out. It's been an interesting conversation now for almost an hour.
How long do these usually go? How long do these usually go? About this long?
Yeah, about this long. I don't want to keep them. I'm not trying to be Joe Rogan and go 3 hours with people. I know people don't have the attention span that long anymore. But
hey,
I try to keep things interesting. And what I'm doing with my life, and I always ask myself that question.
So then, how can people find this interview?
This is on YouTube. This is going to be on YouTube with the Adventures of Travelin Matt. One L, no G. I don't want Disney to sue me. As you know, my name has origins with Fraggle Rock, so these things come up in the Google presence as well. But yeah, Adventures of Travelin Matt on Mixcloud, and Travelin Matt pretty much anywhere except Pad Thai Soundsystem. You might hear me as P Green.
So P Green Volkswagen is also on Spotify.
That's right.
P Green Volkswagen, look it up on Spotify. On this next single, it'll be labeled, because I looked at how Run the Jewels do it. They do it LP, Killer Mike, and Run the Jewels, so that it flows into each one of those pages. So in the next single, it's going to be Pad Thai Soundsystem, P Green Volkswagen, Brooklyn Shanti. So
my little alter ego shining through in the rhymes. And I've heard people have complimented me on it and say I'm a natural, but we'll see.
You're like, for me, you're like oh my God, you're like a Thai iced tea, but you got that same flow. You got that same. That just came to my head, and I was like, how have I not thought that in 20 years? Because the name of your solo.
Why they call me OG.
I know we're gonna keep a rap on the name of your solo album, but when we concepted that one, I was like, whoa, we just hit this one out the park, But I don't want anyone to hear that title until we're ready to drop it, But we're in a very, very good place for hip hop music. We're in a very good place for like the culture that we represent. It took a nosedive for like a decade and a half. Like I dipped into doing Bengali language reggae music. I did a lot of dancehall. I was doing a lot of global bass and tropical bass. But to me, those sounds are always correlated with hip hop because they're the building block. Like there would be no hip hop without the Toasters or dub reggae, dancehall. It's a subset of hip hop, in my opinion. It's just with like patois and then like melodics and patois. But then you wouldn't have global or tropical bass if you didn't have hip hop and dancehall. And everything feeds into everything. And it's like, when you hear people in Jamaica on the island using trap sounds to do like dancehall trap and everything, it's like we're all feeding into one another. And it's been so exciting being at the starting point for all these different scenes and have records out and contribute and tour and just be present. I've got, I met up with Freddie in February, Fat Five Freddie, big up. One of our mentors and one of the chief architects.
Yes, I got to get him on this program. Yeah,
you should. So he knows I have like over 3,000 hours of footage, between my hard drives and like my storage space back in New York. And I just got to digitize them and start banging together all these Brooklyn Shanti Presents episodes, because it's like the first time certain people took stage, I was there because, and it's always a miracle. Like you've got like a bigger name for a hot second because you just put out like a song that people are dropping, but then that new kid that walks on stage is the one that the world just doesn't see coming, and then they're just like on fire, and it's like you see that happen, and that just keeps happening. I know it happens to you every day of the week. It happens to me every month of the year, and it's like just being at the right place at the right time to see that phenomenon keep happening. It just feels good. It feels like a warm hug to be like, for some reason, the universe keeps granting me the blessing of being around because these are my people, you know?
Yeah, some people wait 5 days a week just to go out there and experience something that we do every day, and it's nice to spread that joy.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what we're trying to do here. I thank you very much for
Hey,
your
man, I love
time.
you. I love you, my brother.
I love you too, brother. I can't wait to see what more we come up with. Make sure to follow us. Pad Thai Soundsystem, Brooklyn Shanti, Travelin
Yep.
Matt. You know the spots, and find us on Mixcloud and SoundCloud and everywhere else. Tune in to my radio show this weekend, and tune in to Shanti almost any day of the week. He's all over the internet.
Yeah,
All
yeah,
right.
yeah.
All right, brother. Thank you very
Peace,
much.
brother.
Sawadee Kap, as we say in Thailand. We'll see you on the next Adventures of Travelin Matt. And until then, I'm out and about, and so is Shanti, and we got music coming for you. All right.
All right.
Thank you all. Until the next episode. Peace.
Peace, world.